Hello guys, welcome back or to my channel. If you don't know me, my name is Grace. Today I want to talk about something that is very close to my heart, and that is the experience of growing up as mixed race Japanese in Australia. This is a video that I've wanted to make for probably 2 years since I started YouTube. I just feel really called to share this story. So yeah, there's a lot I'm going to talk about. Buckle up, I've got a cup of tea, and let's just get started into this video. I was actually born in Otsu, Japan, which is a little city near Kyoto, Japan, but no one knows it. My mum is Japanese, my dad is white. The first 7 years of my life in Japan, I stood out like a sore thumb. I was so much taller than everyone in my class. I had curly hair. Not only did I naturally stand out, I also dressed really eccentric, and I love that I was able to, from a young age, really embrace that uniqueness about myself. Being half white is almost something a little bit praised. In Japan, I think whiteness is elevated in terms of beauty standards. Felt like I got positive attention from it. When I first got to Australia, I was bullied for a little bit. I don't really have many memories of it. It was mainly being excluded. At the beginning, I was in my shell, coming somewhere where I was fluent in English, but definitely had a Japanese accent and wasn't as fluent as a native speaker. I also remember just like feeling really embarrassed about my lunchbox, my Japanese food. I don't know if directly asked my mum to, but I do remember starting to bring sandwiches and cookies and stuff to school. And one thing I want to say on that is it's really interesting how our cultural framing of people of different ethnicities really shapes the individual experience, because it was definitely not cool in the way that it honestly, in my opinion, is now to be Asian in that time. I feel like in terms of beauty standards, the popular media of that time, whiteness was very much the thing that everyone wanted to be and everyone wanted to look like. Having that cultural framing in my younger years definitely shaped the way that I felt about being half Japanese. Luckily, I found my feet pretty quickly in Australia. I think that being at that age, you're so malleable. Within the year, my English was pretty much of a native speaker. The next few years, from 7 to 18, every single year I would visit Japan, and that was a really weird experience. There was one element of it that I fucking loved visiting Japan. One of the happiest moments when I would visit for 2 or 3 weeks or a month. We'd go every January and visit my grandparents. I'd see my friends, even though consciously I wasn't aware of it. The sense of spiritual connection I feel in Japan is something that I don't have in Australia. There's this peace that I get that I don't feel in Australia. And yet it's weird because when I was in Japan, when I was 7, I was fully fluent on the same language level, learning level as my peers. And when I came back, that just wasn't the case anymore. The first year I went back, I ended up going to the school, and I just was so behind. And I remember getting my friends help to cheat on the test because I didn't know how to do it. That started to really develop a complex and insecurity for me. Before, I felt like it was a positive thing that I stood out in Japan because I still felt connected to everyone. I still felt like a Japanese person. Whereas when I went back, I didn't have that feeling anymore. And people, I don't think, really even saw me as one of their own anymore. It's really honestly emotional talking about. I feel so much more socially confident in Australia. I think in a deep part of me, having being born in Japan, my mum's Japanese, it's the first language that I spoke. I feel very connected to Japan, and in a deep part of me, I feel Japanese. And yet, I think I realized, did not think I'd cry. I visited Japan in January after 3 years of COVID, couldn't visit, and I found myself in this pattern of when I went back to Japan, the difference that used to make me feel special and unique no longer felt like that. I felt like I just didn't belong, and I felt like whenever I'd visit, I'd just try and shrink myself and try and appear as Japanese as I possibly could, whether through my mannerisms, bowing, being really polite, just trying to blend myself into Japanese culture. But I just realized this trip, that's just not who I am. Not only is it not me being fully authentic, it's also the fact that it doesn't fucking work anyway. I think a really hard thing about being half Japanese and being half white is that people don't recognize you as fully one of their own anywhere. I was told, even last trip, by my Japanese friends that if they saw me and didn't know me, they wouldn't even think I was Japanese at all. And then with my white friends, people say that I look fully Asian. That really frustrates me, and it's not not necessarily anyone's fault, but it really frustrates me. It feels like people aren't seeing me for who I fully am. I think because of the shame that I felt, I just kind of wanted to avoid that Japanese aspect of me when I was in Australia. I wouldn't forget about it. It was always there. I guess people still saw me as Japanese, which is a weird thing with me. I think that I almost erased that Japanese side of myself in my own brain in terms of my identity. In some way, on a deep level, it was always there, but I didn't actively sustain that connection to Japanese culture when I was growing up, especially as a teen. Because I was so young when I moved to Australia, I just felt like I was white Australian. Byron, where I grew up, is actually a predominantly white place. Most of my friends are white. Don't really have many Asian friends, especially Eastern Asian friends. Again, didn't really see a difference between me and them when I was growing up. And not that I want to emphasize on that difference between us, but I did realize when I moved to Sydney, which is a lot more multicultural and there's a huge Asian population, and in connecting with people who are Asian Australian, halfies, mostly people that have fully grown up in Australia, it's made me feel seen in a way that I didn't realize I was lacking when I was growing up. Little things like connecting on our culture's food or our relationship to the language, struggling to speak it but being able to speak some. Even if they don't really speak the language, the pain of that, those things seem very small, but there's moments where I'm like, oh, this is so nice to be around people where we've fully been socialized in a Western country, so we have that element of ourselves and the way we talk to people is very Western, and yet there's another aspect of our identity where we have this connection to a different culture. Having that be a given has been really healing in a way that I didn't realize I needed. I'm now 21 years old. There's a blockage for me in terms of connecting to Japanese culture. I think it just feels like an extra effort. Speaking feels like an extra effort, but I am being more conscious of unlearning that shame and embracing who I really am. Biggest thing working on is allowing myself to show up imperfectly as who I truly am. Both of those aspects of me are equally valid and equally here. I see myself for the connection to both cultures. The more that I can accept the fact that, of course, my Japanese isn't going to fucking be perfect. The way that I express myself in Japanese, it's all because of my story and what my life has been and my parents. I want to feel okay for who I am, and I want to stop trying to fit into a box that doesn't allow for my whole being. Same goes for growing up in Australia and wanting to be white and wanting to look more white, and moments where I felt like people were giving me backhand compliments about being Asian, where I just felt any form of shame about my identity or where I came from. To end this video on more of a positive note, having an experience of two different cultures from such a young age has been such a fucking privilege. It's given me this gift of feeling like I can talk to people from different cultures because I understand how much jumping from different cultures can have such an impact on communication, not just verbal but non-verbal, and connection. That's a really big gift that I've had. And actually, right now I'm having the shame voice in my head of well, you don't understand enough about Japanese culture. That's another insecurity I feel. I understand Japanese culture to some depth, but I know there's limitation to that, and I'm aware of the fact that growing up in Australia, there's a lot that I don't understand about the complexities and depths of Japanese culture, but I know that there's layers that I don't understand, and I also don't want to act like I do. Just being truthful to my experience and my limitations. I think another really beautiful thing has been, I feel so grateful to have Japan, to be able to go back and connect to a culture that has rich and long-standing roots and traditions. I think that's all I have to say in this video. If you have any thoughts, any feelings, maybe even share your own story, feel free to leave it down in the comments below, because as I said, it's such a deeply personal experience. There is no right or wrong, it is just truth. Bye.